Welcome, 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 everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry, we're just that little bit late. Can you see and hear us? Can't see or hear anything. Can you see and hear us now? Can you hear me, Louise? Do you want to say something?
Can you hear me?
Oh, don't see or hear anything. Really? Oh, it says we're live.
Mine's coming up as a blank. Oh, wonderful leak. Yes, can see.
Excellent.
Right, mine isn't coming up on my little test screen here. That's weird. I'll just refresh this.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Can you hear Louise?
Yes, I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you both. Cool. Excellent.
Can you see my lovely daffodils and Andrew's leak? It stinks.
It does smell. It does smell.
It's making me hungry.
It is St. David's Day. St. David's Day is the patron saint of Wales, and us being in Wales here, we thought we might as well be a little bit patriotic. Thank you, Louise. Thank you. Patriotic. And we thought we would have a couple of traditional Welsh items.
But people in Wales do this, don't they? It's not just something we've done.
Oh no,
we'd have daffodils in the shop anyway, and if it was open, it's not. But all around the village, people are saying Happy St. David's Day, and people are wearing their Welsh rugby shirts.
Yeah, everything is good, isn't it? Good, and leek, as you can see here, the leek that we have.
The national vegetable of Wales. It is, though, isn't it?
Yeah, national vegetable of Wales.
Because when I was a kid, we all used to dress up, and I think they still do it now. They've got their little Welsh lady costumes, and they go in with like a big creepy bonnet and the shawl. They dress up like an oldie worldy Welsh lady, and the boys, some of them dressed up as coal miners, others dressed up as Spider-Man.
Why Spider-Man?
I don't know, like Spider-Man or cowboys. It was just a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a boy in our class. Well, all the boys in the class used to wear leeks, and the girls used to wear daffodils.
We used to wear.
A boy in our class used to eat his leek. Sort of the day he stuck. Yeah, that's one of my earliest St. David's Day memories.
Because we used to, you can make those little felt little leeks that you used to pin to your top when you used to go into school.
Slightly
and I did honestly think of actually sticking that, but. Yeah, it would have been a bit too much to walk around today like this.
That's what the kids used to wear when I was a girl in school. They did. They'd wear real
Imagine that.
Or spring onion.
Or spring onion if you're feeling posh. Or gibbon. Right, so, and do you know what? When I did the little graphic for this, the soldering graphic, I put down at the bottom, I put 2 leeks. Why I didn't put daffodils, I don't know. But the leek immediately came to mind. Oh, it's a leek. Go have a leek. Two little leeks. I was just wondering whether anybody would actually notice them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not going to stay there. It's purely there for decoration. We're going to take it home.
Who thinks you should eat it?
No, we can't eat it raw. Can you? Oh.
No, you will stink. Please don't.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put that down. So yeah, Happy St. David's Day. That's my leek. So let's put that down out of the way. Perhaps we'll bring it up. Not that you physically bring it up, but bring it back on the bench.
If you eat it raw, you might be bringing it up.
Right. So everybody, here we go. This is going to be an hour. I've got my close-up camera, an hour's worth of soldering. But before we go any further, is it anything that you want to say, Louise? Oh, we still haven't sorted out the raffle yet. We haven't sorted out the raffle yet. We haven't sorted out the raffle. Before you say anything, we haven't sorted out the raffle.
No.
So apologies for that. We have had a few messages saying, have I missed the draw? Have I missed the raffle? No, it hasn't even gone live yet. And the reason being is it's just... how come it's just so busy? I don't know where today's gone. Everything in my mind was all planned. I had to go to the post office, come back, and then realise I didn't have this, I didn't have the camera there. The camera that was above there, I've just broken the lead to try and get...
to get your leak though, didn't you?
I got that this morning. I was well prepared. The lead for the camera that's above me, I've broken, so we can't have the overhead camera, but at least we've got this camera here, going to be nice and close. So everything is just happens. You think you've got it all sorted, but you don't. So I'm hoping things are going to go right.
Fingers crossed.
Anything I say?
You keep saying that. Am I supposed to say something?
No, I just wondered whether there's anything.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Before we crack on.
I don't think so. We've got some soldering questions. Today's going to be all about soldering.
Yes.
It's a soldering 1 hour special. So Yeah, we've had some questions already.
Okay.
But we're just going to read out soldering related questions as we're going along.
Is there questions that aren't on soldering then we've had? Is
I
it?
haven't had a chance to look at them all.
So Louise said yes, it's going to be solely about soldering today. At this precise moment in time, we're not even going to answer your questions just yet, because what we want to do is get on with what we're doing here, what we got planned, a couple of demos, and then perhaps whilst we're preparing one or two of the demos, then perhaps Louise will ask a few questions. If you've got any questions that are relating to something I am doing here now and then now, so to speak, Louise will ask them out. So she needs to keep a look on the latest chat and the, I haven't been drinking my meths, no. So you need to keep a look out what questions are coming in for what I'm doing. And then when I'm doing the demos, you can ask questions when I'm doing the demos. And then if we've got any time left at the end of it, then we will go through, I'm looking down there because my monitor's down there, then we'll go through the chat and then we can see and try and answer some of the questions. Now, what I must say is that we decided to do this last week. In the chat last week, we had a whole whiteboard full of sort of like not projects but techniques. We've had emails, we've had messages, we've had tickets raised, all about can we do this, can we do that, how do you do this, how do you do that. There has been so much of a response for this. So what we're going to be doing today is solely quickly going over what you need to solder, what opportunities, what various pieces of equipment that you need. We've got 2 or 3 little projects planned, but that's all we're going to be doing. What we're going to be doing at a later stage is going through all the topics that we've had and all the techniques that you want me to show you. We're going to do a live masterclass later on in the year, and that will be most probably 1, 2, perhaps even 3 hours on a masterclass solely on soldering, because as I found doing our Bench Essentials course on piercing, I'm still doing that, there is so much information that you need to know that it's impossible to try and cram it all in 1 hour. So this is purely sort of like a taster of what is to come, but it's going to be a live masterclass, as I said, at least 3 hours long, solely dedicated to soldering. Is that right, Louise?
Yeah.
That's about what we sort of think we planned.
It's just the questions we've had have been so broad and varied, and it is a very broad, varied topic, isn't it? So,
yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm actually dreading putting together the course for soldering, because it's taken me months and months and months purely to do the piercing one. And I'm not quite sure how many, if you've got like 20 films that we're still putting together for our Bench Essentials course solely on piercing. Goodness knows how long it's going to take to do the actual soldering one, because there is so much to talk about. And I know I do waffle on a little bit too much sometimes. Thank you, Louise, nodding your head there. But it is important that you know and you understand everything. There's not much point saying you put the flame, you put the heat there, you can put the heat there, and it's soldered. No, that is not enough. You need to know everything that needs to go with it. Absolutely. So, Amco, yes, good. Everybody coming on. Tom, negotiator, Susan, everyone who's coming on. Thank you all so very much for coming on this afternoon. Sorry, Louise, that camera was still on you then.
Was it?
Knocking back your bottle of water.
It's my water.
So thank you all for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. So the question, Josephine, I'm not going to be answering questions at the moment. We will come to some of the questions at the end, but we will be taking all your comments into consideration for a masterclass that we're going to be doing at a later stage, later on in the year. Not quite gin and tonic time yet. Right, so, right, keep saying so, and I keep saying right. I'm going to have to stop saying that. It is Monday, the 1st of March. Happy St. David's Day, and it is time for not quite a question and answer, is it? It's more of a soldering hour followed by a bit of a question and answer, or even question and answer as we seem to go along, isn't it really? Anyway, all right, so we're going to get started. Anthony, count on you to make my very first solder a successful project. Watch this. If you understand it, you'll have perfect solder joints. And I'll keep saying this, perfect solder joints every time, because you certainly will. Okay, so what do you want to start with? So I suppose torches are the most, there's plenty of options of torches. Here on this little bench here, if we're going to be looking at basic, Louise, can you just pass me one of those yellow bottles to your left, please? Cans. That's it. Cool. Thank you. So what we're going to be doing is just looking at what is available for you guys out there when it comes to soldering. And it depends really upon your actual ability, where you're starting off. You may be a complete beginner, you may be a bit of a good really proficient hobbyist, you may be a semi-pro or whatever it would be. So we're going to start off with the basic torches, and I feel that it's not necessarily about the equipment, it's how you use it. So up here in this recording studio, and for a lot of films that we broadcast and make for At the Bench, we really simply use these little torches. Okay, these are the little sort of creme brulee torches that you can buy in a cook shop. You can buy them at your tool supplies, and they are the most basic type of torch. It takes canned butane. This is something that you fill your cigarette lighters up with, your candle lighters and that sort of thing. And you can fill up the handle with your butane. Simply push it down and it fills it up. Okay, you keep on going. You can feel the handle getting a little bit cold. You saw the gas escape in there. And that is now going to be your torch filled. That was half full at the start of it. What I would suggest you do, if you have one of these torches first, brand new, just depress, let me flick onto my close-up camera by here, just depress this little nozzle at the bottom here. This is where the gas goes in. If you have it brand new, push that in to release any air that may be trapped inside, and then you can fill it up with your compressed gas. The handle goes cold because it's the gas going in. When it starts to splurt out here, it's nice and full, and we're all done. That is that particular torch. It's got a little nozzle on the top by here that we can turn that enables us to get a nice hot flame or a nice bushy flame. That is the most basic, and we use that actually quite often. You can go to a slightly larger torch. This is the big boy. I like this one. A slightly larger torch, the same principles. It has the valve on the bottom, as you can see, exactly the same, has a little stand, and this is an ideal torch again. Fill it up with butane, the gas goes in the handle, and it's nice and simple. Turn the nozzle, you push the button, and the torch lights up. You can adjust the flame to go from nice bushy flame, wouldn't often use that, to a nice hot flame. Nice and simple. Those are the two most basic torches. I think we've got some links that Louise is going to put up for the things that we're going to be sort of like not promoting, but there's some affiliate links if you want to go and buy these torches. I think they're on Amazon if you want to go to Amazon, or you can go to your local tool suppliers. Little one, slightly big one, and we use these all the time up here, and you can make the most gorgeous jewellery just solely using those torches. Obviously then there are limitations. Do you have to see those, Louise? Yep.
Hamilton gas?
Nope, not yet. Nope. Tools that Andrew uses.
It's always in there, is it?
Is it there? Yeah. Is it there?
That's just going to be a link to lots of tools.
Yes, that's right.
That's fine.
That's
okay.
it. Yeah.
Robin is asking, would you agree that one step up from the little jewellery torch using butane is the kind of torch that twists on a whole larger canister of butane before getting into, say, a Smith little torch?
I don't necessarily like those canisters. They're more, people do use them. I haven't used them myself, but at least you've got a bigger canister that you're going to be able to solder for longer. I don't know what sort of temperature they get up to, but it's the next step up from this guy here, most definitely. But if you're looking at another step up, perhaps you don't want to have the gas in the handle or have to hold on to the handle or have the gas canister hanging down. The other type that we use here in the UK, and I think it's not available in the US, is a sievert torch, okay? And let's get a close-up camera on this again and see how wide we can go on this one. Here we go. So these are the sievert torches that we use here. Sievert handle. This has got a big melting nozzle on at the moment. And this goes into a tank of propane, okay? This tank cost about, for us here in the UK, about £15. That will last you, at least a year. This one, we've got 2 positions on the regulator, haven't got anything to light it, but this really, you can hear it, it's like a jet engine. Okay, and we use that for melting down when we come to casting. But the advantage of these sievert torches is that these nozzles here will come off. And when you want to buy it, you can buy it in a kit. And Louise is going to put up a link to Hamilton Gas, and I would recommend Hamilton Gas. Not quite sure whether they have it available at the moment. I know last week they were out of stock, but this is how it comes. It's sievert, comes like this. Don't buy it from anywhere else. Hamilton Gas is the cheapest place you can buy it. It's 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds cheaper than Cookson's and everywhere else. And that you will get the packet, there's the regulator in it, there's the handle, and the best thing about it is it has the little pencil nozzle that we've got on there. Absolutely brilliant, is the next step up. And the good thing about these torches, and I think the US has got the equivalent sort of torches as well, is that that little pencil nozzle comes off. You can then buy the neck and the nozzles to go on, so you can use it for big scale melting down, and you want to do some casting with it. Yes, Louise.
What about the US, if you're in the US?
This is the thing. Hokey was one, I think it was. Just have to have a look. I'm not quite
I think
sure.
Somebody mentioned Hokey.
Easy Torch. Letter E, letter Z. Easy Torch is another one, very, very similar, that uses a bottle of propane. That has interchangeable tips as well. I think the Easy Torch is available in the US.
Okay, Four Cone Love is asking any comments about using these gases in general in terms of your lungs.
As far as I'm aware of, there is no danger to your lungs.
I think you're more in danger of an explosion, aren't you then?
Because the gas burns off. You do have to be careful. You have to check all the joints for leaks. You can get some of the special liquid that goes over the joints to see if it bubbles up, or you can use something like washing up liquid, some fairy liquid, that sort of thing.
Presumably you'd smell a leak anyway, wouldn't you? Smell a leak?
Smell a leak. Very good, Louise.
I wasn't meant to do a joke. I'll do the joke, Andrew. But yeah, it's you would though, wouldn't you?
You would. But the things with propane is heavier than air and it settles to the floor. So you've got to watch out for that. Propane, in theory, you can have in the house because of the propane will fire the little gas-powered fires that you have as well, so it should be fine. But if you are having it in your house, do check with your contents and your building insurance, just be on the safe side. But the good thing is with these sievert torches, the nozzles come off and they are interchangeable. And as you can see with this one here, we've got this massive burner, and we melt 3-4 ounces of silver with this when we come and do our lost wax casting. And we've used those for like 15-20 years at least. And in theory, we still use them today. But if you want to go a lot more professional and a lot more expensive, although not initially, you can go for something like this. This is the Smith's little torch. Now,
Susan is saying never turn acetylene tanks on this side ever.
No.
Never ever.
No.
Yeah.
Always keep them upright. If you do have tanks, that's not so bad. That's a short little dumpy bottle. If you do have any taller tanks, obviously chain them to the wall. Put some fittings in the wall, get some chains, put through the fittings like eyelets, eye fittings, and put them around the tank. So yes, the tank cannot fall over. Good point. Very good point. I would show you the Smith's little torches, but we have them downstairs and they're fastened to our gas bottles and our oxygen bottles downstairs. Make sure you buy an original Smith's little torch. There are so many copies, so many fakes out there. They're not expensive. I would never try and buy something off AliExpress or off eBay from an unknown seller when it comes to anything to do with gas. You are playing with fire. The jokes are coming today, are they? You're literally playing with fire. You want to buy an original one. If you do buy original one, they're not expensive. What are they, £150, something like that? But what you have to factor in, is your regulators. You have to factor in what are they called? Fire doofers, flashback arresters, that's the one. Flashback arresters, you also got to factor in oxygen. Oxygen, you can hire cylinders and have them replaced by BOC or air products, wherever you may be. That does end up to be quite costly. Some people are using things like oxycons, oxygen converters that you can buy these days, and you can plug your Smith's little torch into that, and that extracts the oxygen down to the air and put it into your torch.
I suppose hiring gas like that, or hiring a canister, at least you've got the peace of mind that somebody's maintaining it and checking it.
The canister, yes.
And giving you advice on it.
Yes.
Because they do come and, I think it's every year they'll come and service it, won't they?
No.
Will they?
No.
Oh, perhaps it's just medical gases then, is it?
Yeah, because what we have to do is, when our gas runs out, we just take the canister, the cylinder, back to Air Products, and they give us a brand new one.
Okay.
So you don't keep the same canister, it actually gets swapped over with a new one. So
right, okay.
I assume then that obviously it's all been checked, it's all been filled to within standards, and what you have then is a brand new one. Yeah? When it comes to things like your oxygen converters, it's not compressed gas or anything like that, so you should be fine with that. Somebody asked me about a CPAP machine, whether that would work. Don't know. But if it converts air, oxygen into a torch, yeah, there should be no problem at all. Return bottles of expiration dates. This is a good point. Mine doesn't.
I know, but I knew medical gas does, but I didn't know.
Don't know. Perhaps my oxygen would be different from a medical gas oxygen.
Maybe it's not the oxygen that's going, because air doesn't go off. Well, I suppose it does. Obviously it does. Otherwise it wouldn't have an expiration date. But maybe it's the valves and the things like that that perish. I don't know. Maybe.
But the Smith's little torch is going to be your sort of professional sort of standard. What you'll find is that it's a lot hotter, so dependent exactly about what you want to do. Thank you very much for the daffodil funding, Annie. Really do appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully those lights down there will flash at a bit of a test to see if this works. It may not work. Okay. We're just trying to experiment with a few things for our next live 12 hour that's going to be happening in a few months' time. But I haven't told Louise that yet. Okay. All right, so torches. Any more questions about torches and gas before I go on to something else?
Robin is asking what's the difference between using propane versus acetylene?
I find that acetylene is it's a very dirty gas. A lot of Americans, people in the US, use acetylene. We don't often use acetylene here in the UK. I do find it's a very dirty gas. There's lots of soot given off from the torches. It is a lot hotter, admittedly, but I find there is no need for that at all. So for me, I would always use a propane cylinder here. Anything else, Louise, that's just coming in?
Susan's saying tip cleaning.
Tip cleaning on torches, yeah, you can get some small little brushes that you can put into the Smith's little torch. You don't often actually need it because they don't often clog up, but you can buy little, almost like little reamers that go into the nozzles if you wanted to clean it. These sort of little torches here, there's no need, you don't need those at all. To be honest, I've never even cleaned one of my Smith's little torch nozzles. They have various size nozzles dependent on what sort of amount of heat that you want. What gas is better to be using on a platinum? Don't use acetylene upon platinum. It dirties and it ruins the platinum. I would always use propane and oxygen. You need propane and oxygen to get the heat. Hydrotorch. Very good torches. They do produce a very, very hot flame. They are quite safe to use within a house. I've had one. I personally didn't rate it. I found that it was quite noisy. CPAP machine, it doesn't generate oxygen. It forces the surrounding air into your lungs to keep you breathing when you sleep apnea. Thank you, Tammy, for that. Do appreciate it. So I would not myself personally use a hydrotorch, anything to do with MEK and distilled water, although a lot of people do it. do use it, because I want a torch. I want one torch. I don't want two torches. I want one torch that I can do the most delicate work, and then use the same torch then to melt 2, 3, 4 ounces of gold and silver. And the Smith's little torch for me will actually do that, because it has replaceable little nozzles. It also has a burning tip as well. So that is what I would use. I couldn't be bothered using a hydro torch for the very small delicate stuff and then get another torch out then for melting down. That would be my reasoning for that. Anything else, Louise?
Elizabeth is asking, what type of gas do you use with your little Smith's torch?
Yeah, propane and oxygen myself, definitely, yeah. Elizabeth, loves acetylene. Yeah, started with natural gas and propane with a Hoke, also great. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've done the torches, they're out of the way. I'm gonna have a quick drink a minute. Oops, lazy. So now next, we're going to be looking at something, there's lots of things that we can look at. Soldering surfaces. Years and years ago, there was only sort of one soldering surface, and that was something like a charcoal block. Really good. Some people don't like charcoal block. They want to protect the environment. Whether these are detrimental to the environment with the cutting down trees, or whether the trees are done and they're burning, I don't know. That's entirely up to you. Charcoal blocks, they will crack, whether you have the compressed ones or the soft ones, they will always crack when you put a flame on it. So what I would be inclined to do is put a small little bit of binding wire going around it, as you can see, going around it to hold it in place. It just holds it together. You can also put it upon a little tray that I have made out of a bit of copper. Just turn the edges up so the charcoal block will actually sit within that, because it is dirty. If you have it upon your bench, it will dirty your bench, dirties your hands, but it is a brilliant soldering surface. But though, as I said, some people don't like the fact that it is charcoal and they want to protect the environment and the world and all that sort of thing, which is fine. So the other type of blocks, surfaces, are these little soldering blocks. They're not asbestos. None of this in these days, there's no asbestos in any of these, so you should be completely safe. These are small little soldering blocks. What's that? 4 inch by 2.5 inch, something like that. 3 inch by 6 inch by about 1 inch deep. This is a lovely, nice brand new one. You can get slightly larger ones like this one here. And again, it's made out of a what's the word I'm looking for? Can't remember. But yeah, it's just one of those blocks that reflects the heat, non-absorbent, that's the one. You can buy soldering boards as well. Just a simple little thin little board like this. There's other things like these honeycombs that are see-through. There are little holes in these. So if I can just try and get it so you can actually see through it. Anyway, not to worry. They are ceramic. These will break if you drop them or drop them from a reasonable distance on your bench. They will break, but the advantage with these is because of all the little holes that you've got within the surface here, you can get some little pins, and if you're trying to solder something, and you can put some pins in to hold everything together. And that's a very good, I'll turn it around this way, you may be able to see it a little bit easier. There we go, you can just about see through the bench to the bench there. They're very good. And I've got this old boy here. This is an old soldering surface that I have had for a long time. And the advantage with these type of blocks is that you can not resurface them, you can actually sort of recondition them. This one is really dirty, as you can see. There's lots of bits of flux and all over, bits and pieces all over this. You can get rid of all that by getting some sandpaper or going outside onto a nice flat paving slab and rubbing that up onto your paving slab, and that will get the majority of that off. So you sort of recondition it and get a bit of use out of it.
Unless you've got an asbestos one, but none of them will be asbestos.
None of them should be asbestos.
Okay.
Asbestos now has been banned for
Unless you've got a really old one.
Yeah, exactly.
Tammy is asking what type of wood is used in the charcoal blocks. Can I make my own from oak?
Sorry, wrong on camera. I really don't know what it would be, but it is compressed. It is burned completely. So when you put a flame on it, it doesn't burn. There is no flame. I don't know what wood it is.
Okay. Do you prefer the small solder block or the honeycomb block?
I hate the honeycomb block. Oh, I don't like the honeycomb blocks. I find what I use this large board like that, and then I've got another
You can tell which one is your favourite.
My favourite. You see, if I done that with that honeycomb, that would have smashed. So then I would use this little block then that goes on top. I mean, there we go. And that's what I use here on this particular bench, because if something rolls off this, it'll roll onto the board that's underneath. So I keep the two, and it will. Something perhaps will roll off the top. You're melting something down, it'll roll off. The force of the flame will push the ball over the edge, and it'll go onto your bench and it'll burn it. So protect your bench, or have a separate dedicated soldering area. So that's what I would always have, is a little block like that upon a board, and those are my favourites. Downstairs, I just simply use a soldering board like that. Never ever think about, sorry Louise, never ever think about using a house brick. Never ever think about using things like kiln bricks or anything like that, because they're meant to absorb the heat, and that is what you don't want. You want something that is going to be reflective. If you put the flame onto the brick, it'll sap the heat away. You want these bricks that will bring the heat back at you. There's a guy who sent me a message. He's been trying to melt some silver down. He was there for over 30 minutes trying to melt the silver down. He had all behind him some house bricks, thinking that would be sufficient, but of course they're sucking the heat away. What you want is a surface that you can do this to. I can show you quickly now on this. So you heat it up, you put the flame onto it, and what is going to happen is that you can see it's pushing the heat back. Okay, so it's not absorbing. You can see how the flame, if you go too close, you can see the black sector in a second, they bring it out and so forth. Okay, so that is what you want. You want to be able to have the heat reflecting back at you, not sucking the heat away. And that's my little talk on soldering surfaces. You can use granules, sorry Louise, you can use you can use like vermiculite, you can use vermiculite granules. I don't reckon them myself. You can have a little turntable to put the soldering surface on, and when you come to solder, you can spin it around to go all the way around. Yep, absolutely brilliant, no problems at all with that. Yes, Louise, I know you're itching to tell me.
Inez is asking, is it true that charcoal helps with fire skill because of the atmosphere it creates?
It does produce a good atmosphere. It gives it's an oxygen-rich atmosphere. Does it help prevent it? I don't really know. Don't know. I'd have to try that. That's a good question. There's a charcoal block. Yeah, does a charcoal block prevent fire scale? Perhaps if there's some, perhaps Steve's on here, perhaps he may be able to let us know. Any other questions, Louise?
Yeah, Elizabeth is saying, would appreciate an explanation of why and when you use the different types of bricks, or is it just down to personal preference? I think it's personal preference. Some people do get on with these little ceramics and they love the idea you can push pins into them to be able to hold something in place. That's great, but you can also do that with these bricks as well. If I was doing some granulation and want to be melting down some little balls, I would use the little charcoal blocks, because you can get a little burr. How close can you get on this? You can get a little burr and put some very, very small little depressions in there, so when you melt down your little balls of silver, you'll get nice rounded bottoms to your balls as opposed to a flat bottom. I still haven't forgotten that t-shirt that I said I was going to do. So that would be the best way to do that. You mentioned pins on the honeycomb board.
Yes.
Yeah, Janet was asking.
Yeah, some people, if they've got, they're trying to solder perhaps two pieces side by side, they will put it upon the the honeycomb block, and they'll put pins to stop them separating, to keep them close by. If you want to keep things, if you want to solder some claws onto a setting, sometimes you put a U section, so you can put a pin in the block and hold the wires as opposed to another method I'm going to come to now. Yes, Louise.
Thomas is saying honeycomb blocks are great for soldering ear posts.
Yeah, because you can put the ear post on it. Yes. There was a question just now that I was going to quickly answer, but I didn't see it.
Was it about condition? Somebody asked, I think it was, I can't find it now, I think Sandy asked, do you have to condition your charcoal block?
Right. The only way I would condition it is by simply putting a wire around it just to hold it in place. Because as soon as you put your torch on it, usually the block will go and it'll start to crack because of the heat, the localized heat, but the wire going around it will keep it all together. Cake stand will be good. I just saw something that I needed to ask, but I didn't quite see. Wasn't as back as it was. Quite recent it was. Let me just go back. The hard doors break that easily. There we go. As a refractory around piece being soldered does help to prevent fire skill. Well, there we go. Thank you for that. Tripods. Okay. I've used charcoal blocking definitely doesn't prevent fire scale. Can't remember what it was now. I'll go back through and we'll have a look. Go back a bit further, Lou. Go back a bit further. Is there anything on there? Can't see. But I'm sure we'll come to that. It's quite important. I can't remember.
What was it? Do you know what it was?
It was to do with soldering. It was.
Oh, funny that.
I just quickly saw. I thought, I must remember that, and I just went on to something else. Yeah. Go back again. Let me have a look. All right. Smart ass.
That's what we had to talk about.
Sorry, stating the obvious. Wow. Tends to get crumbly, frustrating. Stuff worse. No, wasn't that. Never mind. I have to come back to it. Sweat soldering. You can get hard. Okay, keep going, Lou. Keep going. Keep going.
That's it.
Okay, can't remember what it was now. Okay, so soldering surfaces. You want something now to hold your pieces when you come to soldering. I would always recommend something like what we have here, like a third hand. This is a third hand base, and what we've got in here is a pair of cross-lock tweezers. Absolutely essential piece of kit. Third hand. This has got a bit hot in the past, as you can see, but it's got a nice articulated joint, and I do love articulated joints because we can move this wherever you want it. We can twist this round, and you use this all the time when it comes to coming up to your block like this. You can hold posts, you can hold earwise, you can hold things down when you come to solder. It's absolutely amazing. You can get, these are bent nose, okay, like this. You can then get straight nose, and these don't have any protection on the handles here, whereas these have a little bit of like Formica, heat resistant handles on them. So yes, I do love my third hands. I'd always recommend you get a third hand. Talking about things like clamping down when you come to solder, we use these little titanium strips. Louise has a little link. These are little titanium soldering strips that we use, and we can bend these into shape. We sell these on our website. We ship around the world with these, and these are absolutely gorgeous for holding pieces of metal together. You can hold earwise in place, you can stand them up. There's lots of uses for these. Go onto the website andrewberry.com and have a look, and there's a downloadable sheet showing you how to use these solder strips. They come as a simple rectangular piece like this, and you can bend them into whatever shape you want to hold your things together. Absolutely valuable. Some people use little trivets, like these little titanium trivets. These are from New Concepts, to put things on. And you can put that underneath like that, so you can get your torch underneath, so you can get all around the piece, because don't forget, you are quite limited when it comes to putting things on your block. You can't necessarily get to underneath. Somebody did mention a soldering tripod, which you can also get a soldering wig as well, that is like a bunched up ball of binding wire that's been flattened upon a little stand that you can get the flame in underneath, and you can get sort of 360 access to the piece as well. absolutely essential. You do need a third hand. You do need a pair of cross-lock tweezers. Completely essential in what you're doing. And also plenty of other types of tweezers as well. I always have 2, 3, 4 pairs of tweezers on the bench here. Some are shorter, some are longer, some are a bit more stumpy, but always have these. Don't be afraid to use them. Don't be afraid to get them hot. They get red hot. You can use these for picking up your bits of solder. You can use them for positioning things, for whatever you want, but always make sure you've got plenty of pairs of tweezers on the bench. Don't just stick with one, because if you're using one and you're soldering, you've got the torch like this, and the tweezers starting to get hot, you can put them to one side, you've got another pair, and you can carry on working. So I would always have at least 2 or 3 pairs of tweezers. You're going to need to have a little bit of maintenance on them from time to time. You may need to just file them, refine the tips, make them pointier, make them stubbier, whatever you want. But again, absolutely essential to have plenty of pairs of tweezers. Straight nose cross lock. These little guys here, I rave about these. Some people love them, some people don't. These are called head and shank tweezers, but not really essential, but we can come to them in another film when we do something a little bit more complicated. But I do love these head and shank tweezers. Quickly before we go any further, soldering probes. Some people do love soldering probes, some people don't. Some people can get on with them, some people don't. I very rarely use a soldering probe. I'd always use tweezers for picking things up. Soldering probe, yeah, tweezers will do it. I don't feel the fact that I need to pick up a pair of tweezers, do something, and put the tweezers down, pick up the probe, or pieces moved, put down the probe, pick up the tweezers, put down the tweezers, pick up the probe, to get my general gist. So if it was me, I don't bother with a probe at all, unless you're doing some really delicate soldering and you don't want to put the flame upon the piece. And you can actually heat up the soldering probe and use the heat that runs from the soldering probe onto the very delicate piece of chain that you're trying to solder. But that's a very specialized technique that you can come to. But just starting off, just a simple pair of tweezers. I wouldn't worry about a soldering probe. Some people love them, some people don't. Some people have tungsten ones, some people have titanium ones, some people love them. I just keep picking things up and tweezers and then soldering probes, and I can't be done with that. I'll just have a pair of tweezers. Right, that's enough. Any questions, Louise?
Not really. We're still talking about boards. Yep, Mark recommends the strips. So does Uta. Some
people recommending line punch forges, little weighted bar thingy. Good description. Absolutely brilliant. It's no problem at all. Me personally, I use my cross-lock tweezers weighted like this. That would be very similar sort of thing for myself. But yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Somebody recommended that a couple of weeks back as well.
They did.
Yeah. So yeah, that's worth a look.
Anything else?
Steve has emailed 3 metallurgists to ask if charcoal block prevents tarnish. He's going to let us know as soon as he gets any information, which is fab.
Excellent, good.
Can you drop a link for the best pre-polish and final polish?
Yeah, when we do polishing, we certainly will let you know.
Luke, I tried soldering for the first time in my workspace in my garage. It was freezing. I live in Ohio and couldn't get the solder to flow. Could the temperature... This keeps coming up, doesn't it, in the garage?
It does.
People have awful trouble.
I can just see all the daffodils.
And
leaving there is fine.
Isn't it?
Yes.
That question comes up so frequently.
Soldering in the garage.
It can't be the extremes or the extremes of heat, can it? There must be something.
There's something in the air. Because the pieces are getting to the right temperature, in theory. It can't be getting not hot enough because the flame's on it.
Maybe my joint wasn't clean. Luke, this comes up all of the time, doesn't it?
It does.
It's always when people are working in the garage.
So we're going to have to look at this, aren't we? Okay.
We'll
have to make a note and do some research on this.
Yeah,
definitely.
maybe I don't know. What do people have in the garage? Like, what have we got? Old paint?
Some people may have a lawnmower in there. Maybe the fumes. Maybe the oil in the air.
It's worth looking into, isn't it? Because it is a big problem.
Absolutely.
Susan is asking, pickling solder, yes or no?
Pickling solder? Pickle solder?
Pickling solder?
Pickling solder, yes.
Yes or no?
Oh, pickling solder, yes or no? I'm not quite sure, but we'll come to that in a minute.
Amco, can you use hard solder for all joints you do, e.g. flat soldering?
Yes, I had your email,
Yeah.
Amco. I will address that now in a minute.
Can you think of the name of the line punch forge weighted bar? Yeah.
The claw. Is it the claw?
Is it the...
Lion punch claw? Yeah.
Like we wouldn't know unless you did that gesture.
Yeah, the lion punch claw, I think it was. Right, okay.
Oh, hang on, we've got a few more there. If your solder block is cold, it takes longer to deflect.
Yeah,
do it here in the garage. Yeah. The thing is, it's happening to people
all the
in
time.
a really hot garage as well, isn't it?
Yes.
But yeah, you are right, Steve.
It's extremes, yeah.
Humidity. Yeah, could be the
yeah.
humidity, or like you say, gas or the oil, something in the sulfide skull on the solder.
More wind in the garage?
Yeah, Luke.
Maybe, yeah. Breeze effects of the main torch. Yeah, we'll certainly look into it.
We'll look into that because it's happening increasingly to people, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, let's get cracking. A bit further now. We're running out of time.
That's it, the claw. Oh my gosh, okay. I find in the garage breeze effects if you're using a mini torch. Yeah, a mini
definitely.
torch like the creme brulee.
Because you don't realise the fact that you think the Smith's little torch is going to have a really powerful flame, but you could go and blow it out. It's that delicate, but it's extremely hot. So yeah, that could be a little point worth looking at. Okay.
Susan's just made a really important point.
Yeah.
Never use acetylene in the house.
No.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to be looking at fluxes. Fluxes. Very, very quick now. Fluxes. What do I use? Oh, I rave about. And people, again, it's like Marmite, isn't it? You either love it or you hate it. This is my go-to flux. It's a borax cone. It's a clean borax cone. Lovely dish. Borax cone. Used borax cone. A borax cone, cheap as chips. The dishes are cheap, the borax cones are dirt cheap, and it'll last you for years and years and years. That's all I could say about flux, but I won't. There are lots of other fluxes out there. Some people will use this. This is called Magic Boric. It's a soldering dip, very similar to using things like borax powder with boracic acid mixed with things like methylated spirits or denatured. I can never know how you spell it, Louise. How do you say it? Denatured alcohol. Denatured. Denatured?
Denatured, I think.
Denatured alcohol? Yeah.
So?
Yeah, so boracic acid, which isn't really like a nasty acid, but it's boracic acid, borax, and mix it up with some denatured alcohol, and that's a great, great flux. It coats the surface and protects the surface from fire scale as well, as does Magic Boric. You simply shake it up, you dip the piece into it, you take it off, you set fire to it, or you evaporate it, and it protects the surface. Lots of other fluxes out there that people love. People love all flux. People love, I'm not quite sure what other fluxes are out there, to be honest, but they all tend to be really, really dangerous. If you want to ship them, they usually have to be sent by courier because of the dangerous substance that they class it as. In theory, borax can go, I think, through like normal post. It's very, very cheap. You can buy the washing up. Is it mule? You can use that as a powder. Mix it with a little bit.
Mentioned that 20 ml team borax.
Exactly, and it's cheap. It is so cheap. With this, you add a little bit of water into your dish. Okay, the dish is going to soak up some of the water. The borax will soak it all up. That bit of water I put on now.
A couple of people are saying borax exempt. You just said, as a non-professional, you can't buy a borax cone in Germany.
Really interesting.
Yeah, but then perhaps you could get the meal team.
Yeah,
that's like a householdy type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like a washing detergent clothes whitener, isn't it?
Person would send a borax cone from UK to Finland, but not borax powder. That's a dangerous bit.
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird what is classed. But what I would do is get your cone, bit of water, get your cone, rub it in the bottom, get a brush, and that's your flux. Every now and again, you're going to have a little bit of water into it just to moisten it, and it's good to go. You can come back to it the next day. It's exactly what it is here. Add a bit more water, and I just love it. I just don't think you can get a better, cheaper, or a more easier flux. So I would always love a borax cone over anything else. Unglazed dish, you can have a little slate if you wanted to, but borax, I just praise borax because that's all I've used. I have dabbled with some other bits and pieces, but with all flux, couldn't get on with all flux. I sometimes use the denatured alcohol with boracic acid and borax, or even simple borax powder with denatured alcohol. You can use it as a dip. Thank you very much, David. Really do appreciate it. Is my lights going to flash? Keep an eye on my lights, Louise. See if they flash for me.
I can't see them.
They're underneath the tools bench. See the tools bench all lit up?
I know, but your workbench is in the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Tool bench, yeah? Okay.
I know, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
Thank you very much, David. Really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Shall I just turn the lights on and off when I notice something happening on it?
It's not happening.
Okay.
If this then that is not working. Okay, so very, very quick. That was all about fluxes. Anything you want to say about fluxes, Louise?
I don't think so. Yvonne has said dreading buying a new one, long way off, but all I hear is reports that the ones available now crumble away really quickly. That's been mentioned before, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had that. I think the guy has stopped making them, or the guys took the recipe with him or something like that. I can't remember what it was.
He wanted to pass it on and nobody wanted to know, and now the world is
borax
wanting
coneless.
good borax cones and nobody knows how to make them. He's probably...
They do crumble, admittedly. The other type of thing just mentioned then, Trevor said about fire scoff. I love fire scoff. Small little Prips flux. You can make your own Prips as well. That's another formula that you can look up on the internet. You can get the recipe. You can make your own Prips flux. Start again. You can make your own Prips flux. Fire scoff, absolutely gorgeous. It comes with a little pump dispenser. Spray it upon the piece. It covers it. You heat it up. It forms a protective layer. Yes, Louise.
Not Romy, sorry. Leslie had some difficulty starting off a borax cone.
You do have to grind it. You do have to get your bit of water, and you do have to. You keep committing to think, well, it's not doing much, but you do have to start to grind and grind and grind, like this, like this. And now you've got a little bit of borax. So I just snorted then. And you've got a little bit of borax in the bottom. It's not much to start off with, but you can use it. So you can see, starting off a borax cone can be a little bit stressful. It's a good workout.
Stressful.
Anything else on fluxes?
No, Tanya said you can get borax in the laundry detergent aisle.
Yes, you can. Denatured alcohol, is that like deionized water? No, it's not. Denatured alcohol is a flammable, it's what we call meths in this country, Joe. Whereas obviously deionized water is just simply water that is pure, that hasn't been touched by metals and so forth. So we use meths instead of denatured alcohol. How are we doing?
Yeah, somebody else Billy has mentioned acetylene. If there's a house fire, God forbid, your acetylene tank becomes a bomb that endangers firefighters. Most home insurance companies won't insure your house if they know you keep a acetylene tank in it. So that's really important. Thank you for mentioning that. Flux brush, what kind?
This is just an artist's brush. This is called, I don't know, something Brush Co. A number 2 round. It's just a natural brush, but any sort of brush would do, providing you get a nice fine point on it. Scrap over engineering. He had a flux question a bit earlier. Can you repeat it, please? Because we've got lots and lots of questions.
Sorry, they're coming in thick and fast, and we're just trying to focus on the questions on the bits that you're doing at the minute. So I'm really sorry if I've missed anything. Oh, hiya, Chris. Lion Punch Forge Chris is on.
Oh, Chris, good day to you.
Yeah, we enjoyed your live yesterday.
Yeah, we watched you live. Good. Some interesting topics. Yes, absolutely. Okay, next question.
Can I just see if I can find?
Yes, I am quickly go on. I'm going to quickly go on to solder. What type of solder? Whether you want to be doing silver solder, whether you want to be doing some gold soldering. Pretty much the solders are all the same in what I'm going to be telling you now. Got to leave early. Catch you all next week. Thank you, Andrew and Louise. Thank you so much indeed. Who was that? Was that Ken?
Nope.
Nope. Sorry, I do appreciate
that
it.
Was
David. Sorry, David. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it.
I think I found Ken's question. Having trouble buying borax powder in Ireland for melting, would mule detergent work in glazing crucibles? Any tips?
I think it would, yes. For the information that we've been given about the mule detergent, that you can, it's pretty pure and you can still use it for coating your crucibles. Absolutely, yes.
Ken, was that the question? I'm not sure if I've
Ken's
missed.
question. I'm having trouble buying borax powder in Ireland for melting with mule detergent. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Romy. Yeah. And I missed another one. Who did I miss? Crystalline borax. I have crystalline borax for when I'm melting silver. Can I grind that up for borax paste solder?
Crystalline, I would have...
Is that your question? Sorry if I
would have thought so. I would have thought so, yes. Like pestle and mortar, grind it down. Yes, I thought you would have think you can. You've got to get it nice and fine enough to be able to mix with some water, but I would have thought, yes, you can. Donated alcohol is a mixture of isopropyl and grain alcohol and other ingredients added to poison, make it poisonous to drink, but no water added so it burns off quicker. Thank you, Steve, for that. Very good. He's quick on the old Wikipedia's old Steve, isn't he? I'm only joking. Solder.
Is that right? It's all up there.
It's all up there.
It's all up there.
Yeah, it's all up there with me as well. I was just trying to find it. That's what I have a problem with.
It's your filing system.
It's my filing system. Solder. Gold, silver. Okay, you have enameling, the highest melting point solder. You have hard solder, melts a little bit lower. Don't ask me what the temperatures are. Steve will look it up and Steve will put it down in the chat, I'm sure. What? Steve knows. Steve knows. I don't know the temperatures. I don't find I need to know what temperatures the solder... I always say this.
Do you think it's something, though, that when you're starting off, is something to know, but then perhaps when you're a bit more experienced, you just get to know?
I suppose it is handy to know, I suppose. If you're using some fine silver, can I use a hard solder? Can I use an enameling solder? I suppose you need to know basically then, is the metal going to melt before the solder's going to melt or whatever? So I suppose, yes, it is important to know, but for me in my day-to-day work, I don't need to know. All I know is that enameling, highest melting point, you get hard, medium and easy. So as we're coming down, 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 easy is it melts before medium, medium melts before hard, hard melts before enameling. There's not an awful lot of degrees difference in between the three of them or the four of them, but there's enough of a difference. You can get an extra easy solder, but that melts at even lower temperature. And here in the UK, we don't usually and shouldn't be really using it if we're sending items off to the assay office because it has the least amount of silver in it or gold in it. So I wouldn't recommend extra easy, but easy, medium, hard, so forth.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Do you want me to just fire some questions at you as you're going?
Go. Yep.
But did I just see a question? Somebody's asking if I practice with copper, do I have to use copper-coloured solder?
No, you can still use silver solder. It's completely fine. Just make sure you use the smallest amount of silver solder. Otherwise, it's going to it's going to show up on your copper.
Great. Steve has said the vendors all state the temperatures they melt when you order. That's really handy.
So Steve doesn't know.
Great. He doesn't need to know because the manufacturers know. Leave him alone.
Sorry, Steve. I do apologise, Steve.
I'm actually working on a package to send over to the UK for Andrew. Oh,
nice one, Chris. Thank you.
Tammy uses hot white vinegar and salt for pickle.
Yep, we'll come to pickles in a minute.
Yeah. Why does the temperature matter as you can't set the temperature of the torch?
That's correct. Well done, Trevor.
Yeah. Okay.
Copper solder sets.
Copper solder. Josephine uses copper solder on copper. Very cheap and less visible.
Okay, cool.
Easy is easiest to melt. Harder is the hardest to melt.
can't see your pretty face. There we go, that's better.
Quite like hiding behind the flowers. Okay. For gold filled, what solder do you use?
Oh, yeah, I would use gold solder for that. I've never used gold filled, but I would use gold solder because of the colour and so forth. You can buy then, obviously, the solder. We talked about hard, medium and easy. You can buy that in various forms. This is some silver solder. The hard is of a rectangular section. Now, when you come to buy things like silver solder, all the sections are different depending on what grade of solder you have. This is a hard solder. I've labelled it hard because I'm very forgetful, but it is this flat, thin, must have about 6mm wide, okay? This then is going to be my medium solder. This is a lot thinner. This is about 2mm in width. I know this is medium because I've put a little tag that says medium because I really can't remember.
Will the silver melt before the solder?
No.
No.
This then is going to be my easy solder. This is again rectangular, but not as wide as the rectangular section of the hard. So if I didn't have labels on this, I would know which one it was. You can buy them in, these are like 2 feet, 600mm lengths, really quite cheap and quite inexpensive to use.
Caroline's asking about the differences in solder strips versus paste.
Okay, yeah.
Don't use the P word to Andrew.
I'll get frothy. I'm going to get frothy in a minute. Okay, we come to paste now. We'll have you in a minute. I'm going to sort you out now. Who was that? Who talked about paste?
Oh, I don't want to tell you now.
Right, I'll come to you in a minute. Don't. Right, you can then also buy the solder in various other forms as well. You can buy silver and solder in wire. For those who want to buy a small little bit of solder, okay, you can buy gold solder. These are little gold solder panels that you can buy. Do you know what? They're 2 gram panels, but they could be like 60, 70 pounds just, especially in today's price, just for a panel of solder, which is a lot of money. But what I've taken to doing, and I didn't really want to buy a 2 gram panel of 18 karat solder. It's an arm and a leg, and yeah, we get through it here, but why have all that money tied up in a bit of 18 karat solder? So what I've taken to doing is buying 18 karat solder in wire form. So I can buy a small little bit like this. This was 0.5mm. It was 15, I'm looking at my little information here. The best thing about this was this bit of solder, 6 inches, 0.5mm, it was 0.5 gram. So I would rather buy my solder, 18 karat solder, you can buy it in 9 karat as well, in very thin wire like that. It's far cheaper than forking out for a massive panel that's like that there. So that would be my little tip. Now, paste.
It was just a question out of curiosity. It's not something that's been used, so don't get frothy. Okay.
So paste. Hands up, I have used paste in the past, and I still use paste. Okay, but don't use it on anything but the smallest, tiniest joints. Listening? Okay, so don't use it on ring shanks, don't use it when you want to solder bangles or anything large that the solder joint is going to show. It's rubbish, absolute rubbish when it comes to large pieces and large areas and straights, you know what I mean. You can use paste for doing jump rings. You can use paste for attaching perhaps a jump ring to a chain. You can use a bit of paste if you're trying to put an ear wire to an earring, okay? And again, you can get paste in easy, medium and hard, but that is the only time you should use paste. You've got a ring shank, use proper solder. And the only reason being is that paste is rubbish for large areas that need strength, because when you heat it up, it invariably bubbles and invariably boils, and it gets very, very pitted. The solder joints are visible and you can see pitting. There's little dots in it. It's never a good join. People use paste because it's very convenient. You get to that, you get that, you squirt it out on the joint. It is easy. Jason uses it, and I wish I could wrap it around his head some days because I get so annoyed because he's lazy and he has to get a little bit of this, snip it off, bit of borax on the joint, perfect. No, he sometimes comes along, joint like that, solders it, and there's little pits in it, and it drives me mad. So only use, sorry, I'm getting frothy now, so only use paste for the smallest little jobs. Anything bigger, use proper panel, sheet, wire solder. Any questions on soldering, Louise? Well, I have a breather.
Yeah. Romy and Gillian colour code their strips with Sharpie, which is great.
They do, yes. It's a very good way of doing it.
Yeah.
They said red, orange, green, something like that. So red would perhaps be for the hardest, orange for medium, green for easy. Yes, it is a good way. And also, sorry, Louise, it's also a good way of doing the whole solder, the whole palette, the whole area, or the whole length, because then when you come to snip your little pallions off, and perhaps one goes on the bench and you don't know what it is. Is it medium? Is it easy? Is it hard solder? But then you can actually see the colour because your Sharpie's still on it, and you can tell what melting point it is. Well done.
Is it possible, will it be possible to buy these materials from your website? It is hard to find the right ones.
Let me know what products you want. I have been thinking about it over the last couple of weeks. Let me know what sort of products you want. We can sell the solder in short little 6-inch strips. Just let me know what you want to buy, and I'm happy to stock it by all means.
Okay, Tammy read something. It's okay to use the same solder for different stages because solder becomes more difficult to melt after it's soldered. Is there any truth to this?
Right, Amco, thank you very much for your email this morning. Something that I want to touch on.
That was Tammy.
As well as Tammy has just mentioned it
Okay.
now. Okay, so the properties of solder. Solder, you obviously have silver solder for silver, you have gold solder for gold. The strongest joint is going to be the solder with the most percentage of the parent metal. So hard solder, there's more silver in a hard solder, okay? Medium, easy, it gets less and less, there's less silver in there's less silver in an easy solder, and there's more alloy, and that's the alloy that makes the solder melt at a lower temperature. So if you're soldering a ring shank, for instance, always use a hard solder where you can. It's the strongest, and the color of the solder will match the parent metal that you're using. Same as with gold as well. There's more gold in a hard solder than what there would be in an easy solder, because it's the alloys that make the metal melt at a lower temperature. Now, Amco messaged me this morning. Amco's on a reply now, Tammy, and also yourself. When you heat up solder, you invariably burn off some of the properties of the metal that allows it to melt at a certain temperature. So say you're using hard solder and you've heated it up and you've soldered, perfect joint, excellent, well done. We're going to get around to actually doing some soldering. I hope we can. Or we have to have this another day perhaps, because we're really sort of virtually on an hour now.
Argentum solder.
Argentum.
Use silver solder on argentum.
Okay, so then paste is frothy. It is, Romy, you're quite right. So once you've heated up a solder, okay, that solder will not usually melt at that same temperature again. So say the melting point of hard solder is 768 degrees. Off the top of my head, don't know where that came from. Hard solder, 768 degrees. Okay, you solder it, it has 768 degrees, it's soldered and it runs and you get a gorgeous joint. It will take a little bit more of a temperature to melt that solder again. So you may have to increase the heat to melt that solder again. But you can use this to your advantage. You can now come along with the same melting point solder and solder fairly near to where you previously soldered, knowing that your new solder joint is going to melt at 768 degrees, but the solder joint you've just done with the same solder will melt at a slightly higher temperature. And if you're good at your flame control of your torch, you can get your solder joints all very near each other with the same melting point solder, because the previous melted solder joints have to be heated hotter to melt. So yes, there is truth in that. Next question, please, Louise.
Loads of questions, honestly. Caroline was thinking of putting granulation onto a ring. I'm guessing that's what the paste question was for. So somebody had a question about pallions.
Yep.
Where did I see that one? Do you recommend
cutting the pallions beforehand
yes.
and putting them in the box? Yeah, you see a lot of people who have got little compartments with little loads and loads of little chips of solder within those compartments. Myself, I don't bother. I will always have my little solder strips, my bit of wire, whatever it is, because then if I want a nice big bit of solder, I can leave the strip nice and thick as it is and cut a piece off, a nice thick bit of solder. Say I want a really small, tiny little bit of solder, perhaps I'll have one end of my strip of solder here put through the rolling mill, rolled it really, really thin, so I can cut off a reasonable size, but it's very, very thin, and I can control the amount of solder I put on a piece. I don't like the little clippers that will come along and clip the same size bit of solder off every single time, and people then fill up little compartments with the same size solder. I don't like doing that. I want to be in control of the size of the solder that I'm using at that particular time. I may want a large bit of solder for a joint, but I may want a small little bit of a solder for a jump ring, and they're all the same size. Plus, if you've got anything wet on the end of your tweezers and you put your tweezers in a little pot full of little solder chips, you're going to pick one up and half a dozen are going to get stuck onto the end of your tweezers. So that's the one reason why I would never do that. I also like picking up my bits of solder with my brush as well. I cut a pallion off on my block. I get my brush, it's a bit of borax on it. I've just pasted it across the joint, same brush, pick up my little bit of solder, put it upon the joints. So for me, again, it looks great, it looks organized, but that isn't for me. I can snip a bit off the size that I want on the block, come along, joint, and I find I can work a lot faster than going, okay, so we paste the joint like that. Okay, let's get my box out. Okay, box out, up goes the lid. Get some hard solder, pick that bit of hard solder off, okay. Put that upon the block, okay, there, or whatever. It just takes, for me, so much time. I don't have time. I'll come along, cut it up, and you know what I mean. Anyway, next question, please, Louise, before I get too frothy again.
Are you going to do any soldering?
I'm trying to.
Do you get this advantage when doing, e.g., sweat soldering or pick soldering, because the solder has been melted before you use it for the actual joint?
Usually you won't necessarily keep the heat on it for a long time. It's literally just touching. Sometimes you use the pick soldering, you get the flame onto the solder. As soon as it just starts to melt slightly, you pick it up with the pick or pick it up with your tweezers and put it upon the joint. You haven't really melted it an awful lot. It's only if you actually have the solder joint and you keep the torch on it and you keep the heat and keep the solder melted for quite a few seconds, that is when you would perhaps burn off some of the properties. But quickly melt it upon the end of your tweezers, put it onto the job, you should have no problems at all. Yes, next question.
Silver pearls, thoughts on using ochre or whiteout to prevent solder flow?
Yep, this is another whole topic that we could talk about, and I haven't really planned this one. But yellow ochre paint, perfect. White stop out, snowpake, Tipex, bit of a dangerous flame, fumes that come off when you heat it up. Graphite from a lead pencil, some powdered rouge. All these products will actually stop the solder from flowing. So if you don't want the solder to flow on a particular part of your job, you've got a gorgeous texture that you don't want the solder to flow on, protect it with, as I said, they said yellow ochre, powdered rouge that's been mixed up with a little bit of water, a little bit of soap, Tipex, yellow ochre, I would say them graphite, anything like that that will stop the solder. The solder will not flow on those particular areas. So yes, good question, good answer, good question. Yeah, whatever it was. I'm going to be looked up now, Louise.
Should we do a bit of soldering?
How's that?
Great.
Cool. There we go, Steve. There we go. Fahrenheit flow. Yeah, see, there's literally 70 degrees, 100 degrees, There's not much of a difference between the melting points. Yeah. So
there's no way to control it.
There is with the flame.
Yeah, but yeah.
You've got to keep the flame on or bring the flame back, put the flame nearer, get down to the hot part, just bring it back a little bit.
But you're not going to know what that temperature, without experience. That's just mean you're going to make a lot of mistakes before you...
Yeah, and that's the reason why there's lots of just playing around with bits of silver, bits of copper, putting two pieces together, finding out, do you put the flame near, do you bring the flame back, do you heat up the whole piece, do you just concentrate the piece? There's lots and lots of practice involved with it, yes. Anything else? Bic has a water-based whiteout. That's interesting to know. All right, so very, very quick then. We're going to do a little bit of soldering, shall we?
Go on then. That's what we're here for.
I've been talking like this for an hour. I only planned to talk about this for about 20 minutes, half hour. Okay.
We've just had some really great questions though. So
we have, absolutely brilliant. Thank you all very much for all the questions. Really do appreciate it. These are some good questions. And don't forget, as I'm going to be doing just a little bit of soldering here, ask away. I'll be discussing things, talking about it, and Louise can shout out the questions. One of the questions we had last week was soldering a dome onto a flat piece. Now, let's put my solder to one side. Let's put that to one side. So everyone knows that if you have a contained hollow form, you should never put a flame on it without a little hole within that hollow form to allow the air out. If you heat up a hollow form, when it's cold, the air inside expands and it'll want to get out. And if the metal's thin enough, the air will blast out, the whole piece will explode. So what you must make sure is that you put a little hole in a hollow form. But what we're going to be doing now, I've got a dome that I cut out and I just domed a little bit earlier. This is a little bit of a dome, and I have got a little bit of silver sheet. Now, we're going to solder this dome onto this silver sheet. Now, because I'm heating this up from cold, and because this little solder sheet, this little sheet here and the dome have not been soldered, there is space for the air to escape. Okay, so I don't need to make a hole in the dome or the back plate whilst I'm soldering it. If I want to heat this piece back up at a later date, then I would need to put a hole into it to allow the air, because it's been cooled, to allow the air to escape. Okay, right, so very, very simple. Obviously, solder joints, you've got to have, again, close fitting joints. They must be close to fitting. Must be no gaps. Solder does not like to flow across a joint, across a gap, although it will fill a gap, but it's not the strongest joint. So always have your joints the tightest possible fit. You also want to make sure that the surfaces are lovely and clean. That means either heating them up and quenching them in your acid. Haven't talked about acid. I've got oh my God, there's so much more. I've got a little pot here of safety pickle, and it is sodium bisulfite. Yes, Louise?
Nothing.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were gesturing. Sorry, I'm getting a bit excited again, aren't I now?
Do you want to get your drink?
I have a drink of water, thank you. Right, solder, pickle, right. Safety pickle, sodium bisulfite. This is in a specific pickle bath that you can buy. Downstairs, because we use this for recording, it looks very nice. Downstairs, I simply use a baby bottle warmer. Okay, this is a simple little baby bottle warmer, has a temperature control on here. There's my little jug, the water goes in there. This is my pickle, you can see how stinking dirty it is, and that is what I use. This is the cheapest, this baby bottle warmer off eBay, £9 or £10, postage paid, cheap as chips. Plug into the mains, you can alter the temperature on it. It's cheap, cheap, cheap. Some people will use things like slow cookers, which are great, but I find the slow cookers are just too big for a bench. Even the small ones are still like 3 times the size of that, and you still got to put a container inside the crock. Otherwise, you don't want to put your acid, your safety pickle inside the crock. It's going to wear the enamel out, so I would never consider doing that. So these are about £110. I could get 10 baby bottle warmers for the price of that. So baby bottle warmer is all that you need. Let's have a look. Anything else we need to say? Anything else? Yes, you can. You can mark the strips. Yes, Walter, you can. Okay, let's just quickly solder this. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We've got our dome. I've just domed it. It looks completely flat, but it really isn't. So what I would be inclined to do is get a piece of emery paper, rub it up and down on some emery paper, whether it be a sheet of emery paper, and what you want to do is make sure that the bottom of the dome is nice and flat. I'm going to try and zoom in on this.
What is the acid, Andrew?
Sodium bisulfate. It's a safety pickle. That's all that would be. You can use things like sulfuric acid, 10% sulfuric acid into 90% water. Remember, pour, P-A-W, always pour acid into water in that order if you have real sulfuric acid. Never put water into acid because it's likely to explode. Put a P-A-W, pour. Pour acid into water. Always remember it that way. But we always use sodium bisulfate. It's what they use, I think, to clean swimming pools with. We just get this specifically from a jewellery tool suppliers. You can use things like citric acid. You can use things like vinegar mixed with some salt and some water. That's pretty good, but it's not as good as the commercially available materials. Citric acid is a safe one. Thank you, Steve. Which camera? There we go. That's the camera. Right, so let's get the dome. We're going to make sure that the dome is nice and flat. Okay, we've got a nice even edge running all the way around that dome. Before I go any further, I am going to put a little bit of flux on that edge just to protect it. Okay, so I know it's on my soldering, my block here. Sorry, there we go. Put all that around there. That's just there for now. Pop that to one side. Here's my bit of silver that I'm going to put the dome onto. Always remember to take off this protective paper. Obviously, you're going to do it that side, and once I did forget to take it off the other side. Oh my gosh, that had a bit of have to try and get it off. Okay, so we've removed the protective piece. You can see it looks lovely and clean. Is that clean enough to solder? No, it isn't. How do I know? Because when you put the flux onto the surface, it does that. It pulls up into little bits like this, okay? So on that now, you have got oil, you have got grease. You know when you come to wax your car, you put that lovely wax on it and it rains, you get those lovely, lovely beads. And this is something that Jason is fascinated with. Jason makes waxes and he loves waxing his car, and he loves it and takes pictures of the rain falling on his car. You have all these lovely little beads. Looks lovely and clean. But when you come to being soldered, it is not clean enough for soldering. So this is not what we want, okay? There's oil, there's grease on that surface. We do not want this. I haven't got a cloth, I have to use my apron. So what you want to do, two things that you can do. You can heat this up and quench it in acid, or you can get some emery paper and rub over the surface. I am just going to warm this up and pop this in the acid, and that will that'll preserve the shine upon the silver. So I'm not heating it up to anything like a colourful heat. It's just starting to colour. I can quench that in my acid. You hear that then? Lovely, lovely, lovely. Take it off, and that then is just come out of the acid. Let's just get rid of that water that's on it. And now, when we get our little bit of borax onto this surface, the borax now covers the surface, okay? That is what you want. A lot of people think that if it looks clean, it must be clean. But now that borax is covering the whole of that surface. There's no oil, apart from by there. You can just see that little bit by there where there was water. The borax is not covering. So that then is a little bit of grease by there. But I'm not concerned about that because I'm not going to be soldering. So let's just put...
Bill is asking, would microwaving the pickle be okay to have an old microwave that will never be used for food again? I would say no, because they tend to have hot spots which bubble up, don't they? They can be quite...
Never tried heating up, don't know. I suppose if you put something over the top of it, so it doesn't spit out,
sometimes
perhaps.
though, it's when you put things in the microwave and you take them out and you put a spoon in or put something and then it can just fizz up.
Can you?
Apparently, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it can happen.
Okay.
I probably would avoid putting it in the microwave, personally.
Yes, it's acid,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hot vinegar on your bench all the time stinks really bad. I expect it does, doesn't it? Like hot fish and chips by the side of it.
I like that.
Oh, hot fish and chips. Get down, you son.
Releasing liquids in the microwave is dangerous, yeah. I would say so.
Okay. He can change the chemistry. It's true. It's very true. Right. We have got now our dome and we're going to put it up onto our sheet. And because we've made sure everything is all hunky-dory and all perfect, we can have a beautiful solder joint. If you can put some more borax along the outside, the flux is going to flow everywhere. It's going to flow in between that joint. You can move it around. Where are you going to put this now? You can put this now nicely towards the edge. If you're going to cut the rest off, you can put it right in the middle if that's your desire. It's entirely up to you. There are several places we can put our solder. We can put our solder inside. So what we could roughly do is put the dome where you want it to be. Grab a... Where is it? Did I find it? I can't. I have to use my tweezers. Get a scribe and just gently scribe around where your dome comes to, okay? Because what I like to do is be able to solder so I have the most minimal amount of cleanup. But what we could do here is get some little pallions and put them on the outside, in a different camera, put them on the outside all the way around. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, how close can we go? There we go. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, it can be quite unsightly if the solder flows up the dome or it flows over the silver itself. But if we can put and sweat solder that solder underneath the dome, the edge of the dome, when we come to solder it, the solder won't float up on a surface because the solder loves to be trapped between two surfaces, and the solder will not necessarily flow out and up over the dome. It'll stay exactly where it needs to go. So what we're going to do in this case is we've got a rough indication now of where our solder needs to go. I'm going to get, for the sake of this little demonstration, let's use some hard solder, shall we? Shears, I put them away after me, well done Andrew, but not good in this situation. Grab some shears and I can cut some little pallions of solder for this. The end I have put through a rolling mill and flattened it slightly so we can just cut some little pallions. Where's my, there I am, there, am I there? There I am, cool. And we can just get some small little pallions of solder like that. Very, very simple on the side. We now can use our brush and we can now put these little bits, can we see? There we go. We can put these little bits of solder roughly along the outside where we need them. Okay. So what I'm looking for is just to melt some solder just around the outside of where that dome came to. Let's cut some more. Is that in focus, Louise? Is that in focus, or should I come a little bit wider on that? There we go. Let's just cut a few more. You can use your tweezers, you can use your brush, you can bring them into place. Okay, so those are nice little bits of solder going around the outside. There we go. Let's warm that up. So what we're looking for is to warm this up really, really gently to start off with. You can see how now the borax is starting to bubble. You do this very, very gently and the borax will just gently bubble up and it won't displace your solder. Cool, like that. There we go. Lovely. So let's come down and sit down. Let's carry on warming this up. So what I'm looking for is just for the solder to flow in the little places around. I'm not looking for the solder to flow all the way around. Warm this up. You can tell when the flame is at the hottest. Any second now, the solder's going to go. Look at the colour of the flux. There we go. Solder, solder, solder. Melt, 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 all the way around, just like that. Okay, so that is all I'm going to be doing with that. We've got the solder that's melted in the little dabs all the way around. I'm going to quench that in the acid just to make sure it's nice and clean for the next operation. Louise, any questions?
Yeah, lots of debate about whether a microwave is okay. We should really reiterate here that any advice taken from the chat and not given directly by Andrew is undertaken at your own risk.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's have a little look. Yeah, mainly pickle.
Yeah.
Pickle questions.
Some people use crock pots, baby bottle warmers, brilliant. Yep,
Tammy said, heated a mug of water for tea exploded and splattered everywhere. Yeah, and you don't want that happening with acid. Don't want that happening with anything.
No.
But do you need different pickle for different materials?
No, you can use the same pickle for gold, silver, not a problem. Good. Okay, can't see the tools. Okay,
if I put the link back
so
up.
the reason why sometimes you can't see it is that you've got ad blockers, and the links that are on those pages are affiliate links, and sometimes your ad blocker will actually stop you from seeing those affiliate links. So turn off the ad blocker and they will show up. Yeah, okay.
Lost for Dan, who's a new member, has
Excellent.
asked,
Thank you, Dan.
what is the best jewellery to make while learning solder, or should I just make silver link
Oh,
chains?
you just want to practice soldering. So I would consider making chains. Brilliant. You can make round links. You can wrap the wire around nails, cut them. You can just bend them regularly with the pliers. It's practice, practice. When we haven't had many, you haven't had a big turnover of staff here, and Colin was the first, still friends with Colin. Then we had Ewan. Then we had Jason. How can I forget? We've only in the 30 years we've been going, we've only had those goldsmiths that I've taught. And when they came to me, first of all, I got a piece of scrap silver chain, like a curb chain or a trace chain. And for them to practice soldering, I got the chain, I cut it, right, soldered that joint. They soldered it, came back to me. How did it look? Great. Cut it somewhere else, solder it again. Great, solder it, coming back without the solder flowing on all the links. How did it look? Great. Snip it somewhere else. And that's all I did for about a whole day. And they went through the whole day practicing soldering, because this is the most important technique for you to learn. You can mess up big style, easy, but practice, practice, practice. As we say, it's not all about the wand, it's the way you use it. So it's not all about... Remember that?
Didn't say anything.
Yeah, like that, Louise, like that?
Didn't say
so
anything.
it's not necessarily about the torch or the most expensive torch or the most hottest high-powered torch you got. You can use these, and this is why we use these, because we can make some amazing jewellery using... What's going on?
Scrap is saying solder all the rings in this chain mail.
Yeah, exactly. That is what you've got to do. You've got to keep practicing. Right, back to what I was doing. So that's just come out of the acid. We've got all those little bits of solder dabbed around the outside. We're going to get some more flux on that. Excuse my arm.
Can I just ask you?
Yes, of course, Louise.
Who asked a question? Oh, Voices Forever. Do you just rinse after the pickle with water?
Yes.
Yes.
Some people will say, don't put hot metal into the acid because the solder will absorb some of the pickle and you'll have problems. Do you know what? I've been doing this for 35 years and I've never had a problem. I always, because I want to work fast, and I'm starting to talk rather fast now because I want to work fast. I always like to work fast and safe, obviously. I don't have time for waiting, because if I wait, it's money wasted. So I heat it up. If it's warm, I'll put it in the acid. Why bother waiting for that to cool down, to put it in the acid, to wait for the pickle to do its job, then take it out, then rinse it and work on it. Whereas you can pick it up, put it into the acid, obviously not red hot, but wait a few moments until it goes down to a black heat. Then you can put it in the acid, put it in the water, put it on your block, and you can work a lot faster. And especially if you're making something and obviously you're being charged by the hour, or you're paying somebody by the hour, if you can get through a job quicker, then you can charge less. Yes, Louise?
Somebody's asking, how long does the item need to be in the acid? And so you don't have to file the solder after you pickled it.
In this instance, I'm not filing because I've put on a small amount of solder, because I rolled the end of the solder down nice and thin, so the pallions were about about a millimetre and a half square. They looked quite big, but they were really thin. If you do put on too much, yes, you can always file a little bit off, but I like to do it this way because you can control the amount of solder that goes onto it. Some people will like to stick feed, so they'll heat up the piece, okay, put the dome on top, they get nice and hot, and they'll get the solder and they'll put it on the edge, and the solder, I'll show you now, the solder will go all the way around, and they'll keep putting the solder on they'll stick feed it. I don't like to do that because you don't know how much solder you're putting on a piece, and you may end up putting a lot more solder than what you actually need. You've got to cut it off, you've got to file it off, and it's a waste. So I always like to control the amount of solder that goes on a piece. I find the joints are more successful. There's not an awful lot of solder that you've got to start filing off and wasting money. Always rinse after pickle. Yes, you saw I just put that into the pickle, out of the pickle, into the water, back on my block, and I can work on it. Yes, Louise?
Can you just confirm, Tammy's asking, do you need to make separate batches of the same pickle for different metals? If not, won't some metals such as copper leach into silver?
Okay, if you are constantly putting... I shouldn't move these off my desk, really. If you are constantly putting copper into your pickle and it looks slightly blue, that is the copper sulfate in the solution. Once your pickle has a bit of a colour from the copper that you've been putting in it, I would not necessarily then use it for silver. The occasional copper piece is no problem at all. But obviously, if you primarily do copper and then you do a little bit of silver, it may just taint the silver. But when you start to polish it or buff it or emery paper it, that colour will come off. Absolutely. So you don't necessarily have to have different, especially if you're using things like silver and gold, it's the same pickle. And so I've been using this pickle down here for goodness knows how long. And you can see it's absolutely stinking dirty. Look at it. So, I may consider changing that when we reopen. But
tighter than a submarine's door, you are, aren't you?
Ow. Yes. Come on. It's all money, isn't it, at the end of the day? Right, okay. So we have pickled. We have that little bit of solder. I'm going to go back onto this camera. I'm going to get my what's this called? Visor on for this. So we've got our dome. Let's get some, and also try not to get fingerprints or anything like that, any oil on your joints. So now we can put the dome into position. Okay, if you want to get some extra bits of flux around the outsides, because don't forget, if the flux doesn't flow and cover the surface is going to oxidize, and the solder will not flow on an oxidized surface. You must take care with that. That is lovely and clean. We've got the little bits of solder. You can just see the little bits of solder sticking out on the outside, but that's fine because we're going to be cutting off this bit of sheet afterwards. Yes, Louise?
Scrap Over Engineering is asking, I'm always worried that the top piece moves a bit when the solder melts. How do you absolutely make sure it goes where you want it to go?
You need to go and get yourself some titanium clamps like these here that you can get, and you can come along with this titanium clamp and just hold the dome in place, just like that, okay? So that will hold the dome exactly where you want it. I didn't use this one because there's going to be too much pressure pushing down, but that one worked quite nicely, and that will hold the dome exactly where you want it. You could use your third hand, but there's an awful lot of pressure on those tips. Or when you come to heat it up, just put your tweezers on the top, because the borax is going to expand, but it'll go straight back down as well. So you can also use your tweezers just to hold it all into position. But I'm not going to use those clamps. I'm just going to show you what's going to happen now when I heat it up. Or you can raise, if you don't want the back plate on the piece, you can always get a graver and raise a couple of grains, lift up a little bit of metal all the way around it in the different places, 3 or 4 places, just to raise some grains up to hold that dome in place. So you'd have, use my board for the first time today. Yes.
Sorry.
So you put your graver in by here, you'd raise a little grain up from the metal that would hold the dome in place. Yes.
Pickle disposal.
Okay, so what you would do is you'd perhaps warm it up until it sort of like evaporates, or pour it into something like cat sand, cat litter, that sort of thing. So all the water evaporates, and what you've got left then is the powder, whatever's the dried amount of. Then you take that then to we take it to our local tip, our refuse centre, amenity centre, what are they called in other places?
The dump.
Take it to the dump.
The dump, I call it.
Take it to the dump.
Municipal.
Municipal.
Is that
municipal places? Yes, something like that.
The dump.
The tip, the dump. Yeah, exactly. You take it to there. Yes. But as it is sodium bisulfite, it's a safety pickle. Find out what you do with your swimming pool cleaning stuff.
When you clean your swimming pool.
Well, if you have a swimming pool, you should know what to do with your sodium bisulfite. Right. Good question.
Recycling centre, yeah.
So recycling centre, much better. Remember that, Louise, because we never know what to call it. We always call it to the dump. We take to the dump. Right. The dome's in place. We've got plenty of borax around the outside. What you can do in this case, if you wanted to, is put it onto a trivet like that, so we can get the heat in from underneath. You don't have to, it just helps getting the heat underneath. You can still heat it from the outside, you can still heat the outside of that, the metal plate, and the heat will actually get to where you want it to go. So we're going to use the small torch. Come on, let's just use the small torch just to be clever, shall we? So nothing's going to expand, nothing is going to explode, because the air inside of the dome is going to be able to come out. Yes, Louise?
Where is the hole you mentioned before soldering, Joseph's asking?
There is no hole, because you don't need a hole just yet, because it is not an enclosed piece at the moment. If after putting the dome onto a sheet, then you wanted to put that onto a ring, then you would put a hole in it, because the air inside has cooled down, and when you heat it up, it's going to expand and it needs to be released. At the moment, when the air is heated up inside the dome, because there's gaps, isn't there, where we just put the dome on, we haven't soldered it yet, the air can escape. So we're okay. We don't need a hole at this precise moment. Once it's cooled down, then we resolder it, then we need a hole. But this precise moment of time, no, we don't.
What shape graver? Annie would like to know.
Anything, scorper, pointed. You can have pointed, that's that shape, or you can have a split stick that would be that shape. Yeah, and there's your graver that does that. And it would just be this face, so that face could be like that. Or it could be... It doesn't really matter as long as it's pointed, just to raise a bit of a grain, just to stop the dome from moving around. All right, it's all we're going to have time for, I think, is just to solder this on. Okay, so we can warm up the plate. See if we can bring it a bit nearer this way so we can see what we're doing. Is that in focus? I think that is in focus. So you can see what's happening. Good. The borax now is starting to water is starting to evaporate. The The dome is going to start to rise, dome, rise, sir dome. Okay, the borax is causing the dome to rise, and then once it comes down, the dome just goes back down again. You want to make sure you can always push it down with your tweezers to make sure it gets a good contact. You can see the colour of the flux is turning that little reddy colour. Nothing wrong with that, that's exactly what we're expecting. I wish we could come really, really close with this camera, but we can't. We should have had my DSLR. No, it won't come close enough. Okay. So, what's happened? The dome has lifted because of the expansion of the borax. The borax now has become quite glass-like. The borax has come back down. It's pulled the dome back into the same spot that it was when it was put on originally. We're heating all the way around. And we're heating it around, and don't forget, because we've got this gorgeous solder joint that we're going to be making now, it's a close fitting joint. The solder was in dabs all the way around. It wasn't a complete line of solder, but because we've got this perfect joint between the base and the dome, the solder is going to run. Solder loves heat, solder loves a join, so we can heat this up all the way around. And the solder now is there. Solder's just starting to flow. Not quite sure how good these cameras are, but we should have got in my DSLR. When we do the masterclass,
we can see it looks good.
Yeah, when we do the masterclass, it'll be far, far better than this. So this is just a little taster. The solder, are we still there? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. The solder has flowed. You can see this lovely silvered line running all the way around.
Back a little bit, just a touch. Yeah.
Cool, okay, keep it going. And now that solder has flowed, we move the torch around. The solder will follow the torch. The solder loves the heat of the torch all the way around. If you want to come along just with your tweezers, just to make sure that solder has flowed all the way around, all the way around. Gorgeous, perfect, beautiful, love it, fantastic. And that's it. So we've got a lovely solder joint there. I still get quite excited. I've been doing this for so many years. I get really excited about soldering because to see that lovely, gorgeous, silvery line of solder come between the joins, and then as you move your torch around the outside, the solder follows it. The solder will keep on following it as long as it possibly can, because the solder will always float the heat. So it loves surfaces, okay? So it loves... Okay, so let me just draw this really, really big. Here's the dome coming down, okay? That's the dome, this is the surface, and here is the plate, okay? If there was a gap like that, you put some solder on here. The solder is never going to reach that, is it? Because there's too much of a gap. So you make sure that your plate is in contact with that dome. Okay, so there's the plate. Okay, the solder will stay here. The solder lives between... How do I usually explain it? It's like having a hug. You can feel it. When you have a hug, you touch bodies and you can feel it, yeah? It doesn't go anywhere else. The hug doesn't go anywhere else. The hug doesn't go over there or over there. It stays between the two people, okay? So, yeah. So that's...
I love your analogy.
So that's like solder. The solder, okay, did you notice the solder did not run up here, up the dome. The solder did not run all along the plate. It didn't do that because it wanted to stay in that hug between the dome and the base. That's where the solder would go. But if we did this differently, if we just simply had a gorgeous tight join like that, and we put our pallion of solder, let me do it in a different colour, and we had a pallion of solder by there, okay, what is going to happen? The solder is going to flow initially on the plate because that's where it's in contact with. Okay, so you're saying, well, don't put it on the plate, Andrew. Why not just put it by there? Yeah, but where's the solder going to flow first? The solder's going to flow on the dome. Okay, so let's do something slightly different then. Let's ball up the solder into a little ball, first of all, and then put the solder by there. Okay, so that's the next best thing. But you have too much heat on the dome. The solder will initially melt onto the dome. You have too much heat on the base, so the base is hotter than the dome. The solder is going to flow on the base first of all. Then as you move your torch around, then it'll be drawn underneath the dome. So to avoid this, and this is what I really do hate when I see books, when they say put the solder on the outside like that, and they show a close-up, and you've got to try and remove that little bit of solder that has gone onto the dome, or that little bit of solder that's flowed up on the plate. Pointless, useless. You can do plenty more things to prevent that. And by putting the solder, even if you had the solder inside the plate here, okay, and you melted the solder, as soon as that dome goes on the plate itself, the solder will not flow out here. It won't do it because it likes being hugged. It likes the contact between both pieces. So then all you'll get a nice little fillet to solder, just like that on the side, which is the best type of solder joint you could possibly get. So don't let me see you putting solder here or up here, because there are plenty more ways. And by doing this way, almost like a sweat solder, the joint is going to be perfect because it's in contact. The solder is going to flow all the way around. Sorry, Louise.
Amco is saying, wouldn't you normally first saw the back plate round so you don't have to solder on your scraps? And
Yes.
you can melt and rest.
Yes, yeah. Because I was going to solder that right into the middle of the disc. But yes, you're quite right. What I would do is to avoid the wastage, I don't say the wastage, but all this area around here. Yes, what I would do is, and I did actually have, I previously prepared this, I actually had a disc that I was going to solder the dome directly on, and that disc is exactly the right size, but I couldn't have really shown you how that solder flows if I'd used that disc. But yes, good point. I would try and make the metal a little bit bigger than the dome itself, so I can be sure you get a good joint, and then you can file back to that edge of the dome perfectly. Yes.
Trevor's saying, after the soldering is complete and the piece has cooled, would there then be a slight vacuum inside that could pull thin metal inwards?
There would be, exactly right. If the metal was thin enough, it would suck it and it would pull it in. But this metal, this is about 1/3 of a millimetre, the dome was, the base plate about 1/2 millimetre. The amount of vacuum within there will not even move that dome at all. And if you want to come along now, you can drill into it if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. But as you can see, because the air expanded before it was soldered, there was no need for a hole. But if we come along now and cut that sheet off, tidy it up, polish it, solder onto a ring shank, solder anything else onto that dome, near that dome, you must then drill a hole to allow the air inside to escape. Also, what I would not do is, if that was hot, I would not quench that in the acid straight away, because if that solder joint wasn't perfect and there was a slight air hole in it, by putting that into the acid, then the air would cool down and it would suck the acid inside the dome. Then, if you happen to heat the piece up, because of the expansion, it is likely then that the acid will be squirted out through the hole, or if you put your little hole in it, it's likely that the acid is going to squirt out. So always make sure that piece is cool before you put it in your pickle. Go on, you're laughing at me.
Chat.
Go on. Anything else?
Don't look, Andrew. Yep, they're liking the hugging analogy. Fab.
Because if two of you hug, the hugs don't go anywhere else. That love doesn't move between anyone else. It stays between you, doesn't it?
I'm sorry we've overrun today. We've overrun by like almost a whole hour. But hopefully it's been good.
So yeah, I was going to do.
I said that like it's finished. I don't know. We might not.
I had planned on. I've made a bail. I was going to solder the bail onto the dome because someone asked about how do you solder bails onto. Do you know what? There is so much that I could go on, as you know, for hours. So, so this has virtually been 1 hour 50, and that's all I've done. So you can see how I'm ignoring that, Steve. I haven't looked. I'm sure Louise will tell me a bit later. So this pickle has been warmed, and you can see I only put that in there, what's that, 20 seconds ago, and you can see how clean that is. Yes, as was it Amco said about would you cut around the outside? Yes, I wouldn't have had all this around the outside because I haven't ruined the silver. Let me just get that. That's good. I haven't ruined the silver, but I could have taken better precautions and just cut off the bit that I actually needed and then left the protective paper on the rest of it. So that is, how close can this particular camera go? Let me focus on that. No. That's pretty focused, isn't it? So that joint is absolutely spot on. Focus, there we go. Not quite, is it? There we go. So that joint is looking good. The solder has not flowed onto the base. This round here is a little bit of borax. But as you can see, the dome is clean. The solder has not flowed up that dome. This may look like solder here, but this is just where the flux was. This just kept the silver nice and shiny. And that is a gorgeous, gorgeous solder job.
Cool.
And that's all I'm going to be doing because we could be here for another hours easy going through everything that I had planned.
Fab.
Any other questions that are coming through, Louise?
Let's have a look. Ines is saying, recently became an At The Bench member. I'm currently doing a project of one of the videos and absolutely delighted how all my questions I asked through the site are answered. Thank you.
Good, thank you so much indeed. Really do appreciate it.
Fabulous. Lots of questions about what's going to happen next week.
What do you want?
What do you guys want to see next week?
I'll tell you what we can
now
do.
do another dome with solder paste.
Don't get me started. So I think next week we could do, because I haven't brought my book in. I have not brought my book in.
You still haven't done your show and tell.
I think we can do some show and tells next week.
Marion is saying more soldering.
Oh, Tammy, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I do get very passionate about what I do. I don't like seeing bad techniques or anything. Steve, thank you so much indeed.
You,
really do appreciate it. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed. I don't like seeing bad techniques taught. There's better ways of doing this. There's never one way of doing something. There's obviously lots of other ways of doing things. Some are better than others, some are not. And I always try and do these type of techniques when it comes to soldering because it just saves so much time.
Why don't we do, because a lot of people like these focused sessions.
Yes.
But I think the general Q&As give us an idea of what
questions people have and what they're struggling with.
What the common themes are.
Yes.
So could we alternate? How do people feel about that? Do you want to alternate and have a general Q&A and then a focused Q&A?
Yeah.
And go that way, or we could even put a little questionnaire out and see what people want to know. We could do it we could ask you and you could fill in a little form and send it back to us. We could do it that way so we can... So we do a bit of both because I think people do still like, the focus is good, definitely, and today's been a really good session. There were no books last Tuesday either. No, they weren't, Joe, because Andrew's got to bring his in. I've got my next one lined up.
You have, haven't you? Yes. Yeah. You couldn't find it this morning, could you?
No.
I found it straight away. Do you know where it was? On your bookshelf.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Alternating. Yes. Yep. Great. Every other week being the focus sessions. Yeah. I think otherwise it might just get a little bit too.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, Gordo.
Yes, thumbs up.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Thank
excellent.
you very much indeed.
Yeah, so
yes.
maybe we'll do that, and then next week we can put together a little questionnaire and see what people. Yeah, sometimes you have a question you like answer that's not on topic, so it's not. Yeah, nice. That's what I thought. Yeah, alternate weeks is best because then it's a bit of everything. Then keeps things nice and fresh.
Okay, so perhaps what I'll do is keep that to one side, and perhaps then I can do perhaps a couple more week after next. So we don't have too much soldering, but perhaps we can just show a couple more techniques, sweat soldering again, putting things together. Perhaps we'll just do that.
We'll just give that a rest for a minute.
I can have a lie down, Lou. I can have a lie down. It just takes so much out of you, doesn't it?
Oh, you guys want more soldering? Okay. Thought you were all going to go.
No more soldering.
No more soldering.
Next week there will be a Q&A, but I think the week after we can do another soldering one then.
Yeah, and then maybe the next alternating one after that we can ask and see what people want
or
to...
setting or something like that. Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Thank you, Esther.
Oh dear, is there a thumbs down? Is there a thumbs down? Oh, I don't understand some people. They're just... Is there a thumbs down, Lou?
I don't care.
Don't care. We ignore the thumbs down. We embrace the love, don't we? That's what we do. We've got a great community here.
Look at the positives. That's what we've said since this time last year and the pandemic started. You just focus on things you can do and the things you do that have a positive impact, and just obviously try and minimise the negativity, but
oh my gosh, yeah,
but don't get too caught up in it all.
I think it's been really I think the past year has been tough for everybody.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And we've loved, I think we've only missed 1 week, haven't we? Which was Christmas. I can't remember. Have we missed 1 week? Question and answer?
Yeah, that was my meltdown.
I think we've only missed 1 week, and we enjoy it because it's something that's going to be regular, something that we look forward to. I thought I'd prepared this hour pretty well, but it proved that I hadn't, and there's loads more things. I had broke that camera, but mind you, not quite sure whether that camera would have worked today. But things happen. We work through it, and it's just been really good. We've enjoyed the community. We've got a fantastic community, and with the 12 hours that we've done.
Like I said, it's Jason doing the thumbs down every week.
I dissing him. He's dissed me again. Give me a thumbs down.
Interrupted you then, sorry, darling.
And I think out of the question and answer came the two Q&A, the two 12 hours that we raised thousands and thousands for charity, for UNICEF, the first one, and also Cancer Research UK for the second one. And because of you guys have raised the money. We've just done this for our own pleasure. Amco, you're more than welcome. And it is sometimes you need someone to show you not just what to do, but why you're doing it and why things work and why things don't work and things. It just needs someone, I think, just to show exactly what needs to be done. And that's where I'm going to leave it, I think. So next week, question and answer, same again, Monday, 4 p.m. And then the week after, we're going to carry on with a bit more soldering. We're going to carry on with that little bit of a dome. Perhaps we'll solder it onto a ring shank, or we'll do something else. We'll do that sweat soldering, put the bail onto it, whatever. And we're going to have a bit of a play around with that. And then perhaps we will put together a little document to send out to people they can click on. Just let us know what sort of focus, what do we call them, focus hours?
Yeah, just
that we can
focus
do.
Session, yeah.
Focus sessions, what focus sessions we can put together.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I can talk all day, as you most probably
do.
And I'm quite passionate about what I do, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this. So it's all about sharing, and we were on Lion Punch Forge's Instagram live yesterday and talking all about passing on techniques, showing techniques, learning from different people. You may sit down on somebody else's bench and they're using a different type of flux, different type of tools, and you just do get out of your comfort zone.
This is great. The chat's been amazing today. Everyone's been helping each other, and it's been really, really good. And that's good as well, because when the questions aren't so thick and fast, these guys have a chance to network a little bit, which is always lovely.
Absolutely. And it is really good. There's a lovely community. I think there's about 190 people on when I was talking. It was down still under 144 now. And we really do appreciate every single one. And I know, woo! it's flashing! Yay! It works. My lights are flashing. This is something we've got. Me just trying to turn this round. Look. Let me focus on this. Look, my lights are flashing.
It worked. Oh!
There we go. So that, anyway, this is something that we're just playing with.
Oh, thank you guys.
Thank you, Voices Forever. Really do appreciate it. Ghost Town. Thank you very much. So yeah, we're working on little ideas to make our next 12-hour a little bit of fun. That's just a little bit of an eye-opener, something like that, is it?
A little taster.
A little taster of what is in store for our next 12 hours that we haven't decided when we're going to do it yet.
From the last one. We've got to do the raffle.
The raffle is going to be next. We're going to try and sort the raffle out. But do appreciate it. Thank you everybody who has come on today. Sorry it took me so long to look at the solid. Yes, Steve, I'm surprised you didn't know that off by
Andrew.
What? I'm sorry. No worries, Steve. We do appreciate your input into the chat every single week. Really do appreciate it. And we do really appreciate the wine as well. Yeah, this it's coming again.
You make the lights flash again. Thank you. Look. You've been tinkering with that all week.
I have.
That's made him so happy.
I've been tinkering. It does work. I've been tinkering all week. Oh, my friend.
Thank you very much.
We got other things planned. There are lights, as you can see, can't quite see up here and here, that should be there. I'm not going to tell you much. We're going to have an awesome 12-hour next time.
Going to make it even more fun.
Even more fun for the next 12-hour. And perhaps I won't have to go on every on every single one.
Right. Thank you, everybody. I know we've really, really majorly overrun, but thank you so much for sticking with us for 2 hours.
For a whole 2 hours now. But yes, thank you.
You're all amazing.
Yeah, you are. Thank you all very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for the donations that are coming as well. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Next week, Q&A, week after, soldering. Elizabeth, you mentioned about the forum.
Oh, we forgot about the forum.
Is Elizabeth a member of At the Bench?
I'm not sure.
Elizabeth Rowlands. If you're a member of At the Bench, you should be getting an email tomorrow with information regarding the forum. It should be live around tomorrow lunchtime. The forum is going to be on At the Bench. It's only solely for paid members of At the Bench. Thank you, Elizabeth. You should be getting an email tomorrow with a bit of information regarding it. The moment it's a forum, all the categories are there, but it hasn't been populated. It hasn't been, obviously, we need you guys.
I'm going to spam you all with gemology questions.
Hang on a second. Where are you two? There we go. You're now. Yes. So the forum is going to be live. It's going live tomorrow. Everyone's going to get an email. It's only for paid members of At the Bench. It's like a normal type of forum. You can post questions, ask questions. There's gemology sections, bench tips. You can you'll be the first to know about the promotions and the discount codes that are going to be going up on At the Bench before anybody else. It'll be on there. You'll get an email tomorrow. It's pretty empty at the moment.
I'm going to put my questions on tomorrow.
Are you? There's one post, and that's by me. No, there's two posts. No, one post by me. Who am I? It's me, Andrew Berry. So it's up to you to fill it up, ask questions, introduce yourself, and that's what our forum's all about.
If it's anything like the chat on here, it's going to be absolutely amazing.
It will be absolutely amazing.
It's going to be right now. These guys want to go, so grab your leek berry. Let's go.
We're off. Happy St. David's Day. Me and Lou are going now, and we shall see you next Monday. Say goodbye, Louise.
Goodbye, Louise.
We will see you all next week. Take care. Have a lovely week. Stay safe. And we'll see you next Monday. You ready with the slides, Lou?
No.
Stop playing with your dads.
I'm doing my Morrissey impression.
Stop playing with your dads. Get the slide ready. Everyone, take care. See you next week. Bye for now.